Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube segment, I wanted to pay a tribute to a person that had passed away just very recently, and renowned person that was very prominent with the Marvel Comics group, Stan Lee. He has passed away at the age of 95 years old. He was a publisher, editor, even a producer, figured very prominently and very strong proponent in the success of the Marvel Comics group industry. I mean, it's a very sad moment. I was actually really feeling despondent about this a little bit earlier. Before I made this video. When I was younger, back starting maybe the mid 70s and going on into the early 80s, I was really enamored with comic books, Marvel Comics. I believe I liked them. That was my favorite over DC. It seemed like it was more true to life. They had certain moments in them that, like for instance, there would be like something that would be said in a comic book. I think it was a Spider-Man comic, and it made a reference to a commercial on TV. It was something like, "You're not getting my Bud Light, Peter." Well, getting back to Stan Lee, what he did, and him collaborating with others and really creating all these superheroes. It really, there's no way you can really talk about everything that this led to. The Spider-Man, I think especially, was so iconic. It was so ingenious, so original. It's just amazing what this man did. And his great involvement with the Marvel Comics industry, and many people see him as somebody that played a strong role in revolutionizing the comic book industry, and with all these, just very great ideas and storylines. This has led to movies. It's led to cartoon. There was an animated series in the 1960s that had a number of Marvel Comics superheroes. I know there was one for Spider-Man, and then they had something with the Incredible Hulk, I believe, and Iron Man. And some of you may have remembered back in the late 70s to maybe early 80s, the Incredible Hulk. It was a fairly popular series. It starred Lou Ferrigno as the Incredible Hulk, and Bill Bixby played the Dr. Banner, or whatever they called him in that on the show. And what happened was, during the time when I was into the comic books, I actually had seen myself as perhaps an aspiring cartoonist or illustrator. I had actually became enamored with drawing Spider-Man, and thanks to Stan Lee and the people that were that created him and other superhero characters, it gave me and so many other people so many things to do in terms of the drawing. I'm sure there was a lot of people that became really inspired others to do maybe comic book writing, comic book illustrating, people that were artists. It opened a line for opportunities for people to be employed with comic books, and I'm sure it inspired other people to come up with superhero ideas. What this man did is unbelievable, and his legacy, he's gone, but certainly not forgotten. His legacy, I believe, will endure, forever, really, in the comic book world. And this is something that I look at, and I can remember talking with some friends in school back in a time when I was interested in comic books, and we would sometimes trade them. That was something else it gave me to do during the time that I was in school, for the earlier part of the time I was in school. And we would talk about certain things in it. We would, I mean, I can remember one time I was speculating on whether Ned Leeds was the Hobgoblin or not. I don't know who ever was the Hobgoblin. I don't think I know if I ever got to that part of it, but that was a, Spider-Man nemesis at the time. And it just led, I mean, it led to conversations, it led to drawing, people aspiring to do things in the comic book world and in that industry. I mean, you've had movies that have come out because of this. I mean, Stanley is obviously somebody very iconic, and he was one of the main, I mean, people. When we look back, in terms of comic books, and we look at ingenuity and the creativity, I mean, it's almost like if you were to go to a book and you were to look up comic book creativity, ingenuity, I mean, Stanley would be like with his picture. I can envision it being right over there and right on that description. And I want to, of course, me, I mean, those of you that know me on my astrology YouTube channel, know that know that obviously I do videos on astrology, so I want to incorporate something astrological into. I thought this was interesting. I looked at one thing that really stands out is that Stan Lee in his chart, he has Mars, if I remember correctly, Mars conjunct Uranus in Pisces. And this is something, I mean, I don't know his time of birth, so I don't know what house it actually falls in his natal chart. But right there, that can give a lot of energy into something, into ingenuity that's connected with something fictional and fantastical. So it's really not much of a surprise he had an aspect like that in his chart. And a lot of, I mean, you're talking about Mars with that connection with Uranus, a lot of very quick energy and very aggressive and assertive energy as far as that goes, and even maybe that's what helped give it some pioneering energy as well with him. So there's really it's really not much of a surprise to see where the ingenuity comes from in terms of him doing something on a fictional or fantastical level, or whatever you want to call it. So him. You have Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby. Obviously, they were very strong components in the Marvel comics world. These are all, I mean, people that led the way for other people to work with different, whether it was Marvel Comics or other number of other comic book industries. They were very, I mean, these people, when they created these superheroes and with their tremendous imagination, of course, again, that Mars conjunct Uranus and Pisces with Stan Lee, of course, that's where a lot of that imagination comes in, I believe. And the thing about it is it inspired so many other people to do something similar. I remember it also, when I was younger, and this is like, I think in 1981, I remember going to some comic books convention, and I was of course interested in Marvel comics at the time. And I remember at the time I was being as a reporter actually came by. I think what happened was I had something happen with a newspaper in New York I was in, and I wasn't in that. Well, really wasn't in the paper in a way. Was what happened was my mother had written to somebody in for one of the New York papers, and for some reason I guess something got published connected with that about me and the fact I was so enamored with comics. And because that letter or whatever got published, I actually got in there. I don't know what it was, if I got in there for free or something to some comic book convention or whatever it was. But anyway, that was a great experience I had. And I mean, if it wasn't for Stan Lee and the other people that collaborated with him on a number of these great superheroes that were created, The number of them have withstood the test of time. I wouldn't have even gone to that. Wouldn't have even gone to that convention. So it just inspired a lot of fans and a lot of people to have something to do. There's comic book conventions. I'm sure there's still some ongoing, and a lot of this is because of what those people did, and including I call him Stan the Man Lee. But anyway, that's what I wanted to get at, and I wanted to just say again, Stanley, if you actually can see this, I mean, hopefully, I believe you hope you are in heaven and you can actually see these videos and other people are doing in the various tributes to you going on at this moment in time. What I want to say is thank you for all you did, and you gave me you made a lot of the time go by quicker for me back in that period from like the mid-1970s to the early 1980s, again, when I was truly enamored and infatuated with comic books. And Marvel Comics, I think, again, is superior to DC Comics because I think a lot of it is more, a lot of it was more true to life. And they would seem like they'd incorporate certain events that would be taking place as far as worldly and globally during that time, of whenever those particular issues were of the various comic books. So anyway, and the only other thing I wanted to add is, I remember, I guess it was Stan Lee that had written this a lot, the word Excelsior. Now, I think he used it for a different reason, something about always moving upward or something, just making progress, just always going in the upward direction, not looking back. But it's interesting because another definition of Excelsior, I had looked it up a little bit ago, was something connected with like a product that was the highest quality and the superior. Well, you know what I say about Stan Lee? I think that word Excelsior very well applies to him, because he is, of course, to me, a gold standard of excellence in terms of comic book production or superhero production, creativity and ingenuity, or what have you. So I wanted to close with that. Enough said. Anyway, people, until next time, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.